some other cars, mostly besides like, you know, Fords and Chevys, because that's usually what I feel like I talk about the most, is between those two brands. So I'm like, and Dodges, I've kind of mentioned Dodge a few times, right? Like, I like Dodges. I'm like, I'm not one that goes away from certain brands because of certain things. I'm like, I like Dodge vehicles. Well, some, right? Same thing for any brand. I'm like, I only like some, not all. Like, I like Challenge. From a body style, I think I prefer Challengers over Chargers. But that's just me. From a practicality, obviously it's the opposite. But like, I think they're nice. I think they sound nice. Right? Obviously they're a boat. And people always say they're boat, which they are, right? They're heavy cars. But I think they're more manageable than most cars. But I think some other brands that I do like looking at, I like looking at Lexus. Like Lexus with their 2 URs and their little 5 liters. I'm like, those are nice. If you've never seen any of those or heard of them, I would highly recommend like really looking stuff up about those things. I'm like, that is a nice vehicle. It sounds great, right? And you know, like for me, I'm like, I don't really care much about super fancy interiors and all this. I'm like, I don't really care. I'm like, I drive a C5. This is about as bad as it gets, the interior. So I'm like, and I still love this car, right? So interior's never really been a thing that I get so like crazy about. Now, yes, obviously it's a Lexus. Most of the time, especially a newer version of that of those, will have nice interior. But that's just who they are. So I'm like, cool. But that being said, they have a couple cars with the 5 liter, right? They had an ISF. Actually in 2007 they even had it in a hybrid. I think it was like the LS like 600 or something, but it was initially a part of a hybrid, I believe. But now, was it sold in the States? I don't think so. Right? I think in the United States, I think there was only ever really there was a couple trims that had it. And the first one was the ISF, which was basically, my view of it is, it was the competitor for the G8 GXP from Pontiac. Right, the original Chevy SS that was here. That was our first 4-door vehicle to ever get the LS3 here. So that one, and I say that because of power, right? Like the ISF, I'm like, it was one of that was basically a gamble, or basically a Lexus's version of a project car. Like the way I've always mentioned the C5 being a project car, I find it that for the ISF, that was their project car, because pretty much everything was brand new for that car, right? The entire powertrain. And that was the primary focus of that car, which is what I like. I like a powertrain-focused vehicle. If it fails, they true. You know, it is what it is, but it didn't, right? Now, that being said, the ISF, so the 5-liter list it's a part of their F brand. So ISF was the very first one that started in 2008. Right after that was the RCF. And then you had the IS500, GSF for a short stint. And now there's the LC500, which is obviously the most luxurious version of that car. Now, from all those cars, the only one that has a ISF, IS500, RCF, and GSF, all of them have 8 speeds, right? It's called an AA80E, right? That was made in 2008. That is the first like 8-speed automatic transmission probably, I'm pretty sure, ever made. And it worked, right? That was a gamble. Like the 5-liter, that was the first time Lexus had ever made a 5-liter. And then they move it to a 8-speed automatic, right? And for the time, it was probably the fastest paddle shifting transmission in the world for a short stint. Obviously, eventually the dual clutches from Porsche and stuff started coming out, and it just wiped the floor with it. But for being a torque converted automatic, that was one of the quickest automatics. Now, is that vehicle like, you know, gonna wipe the floor with all these cars? No, right? But I would still love one, just because they sound great, right? But now from what I said earlier about the ISF and the G8, the only reason why I think at that time it was the rival for it is because of there was literally a one horsepower difference. They're both four-door sedans, right? Like the Lexus made, the power of that 5-liter at the time was 416 horsepower compared to the LS3 of the G8, which was at 415. Torque was the only real difference. Torque for the G8 remained at 4.8 or 415 still, but the GSF's torque dropped down to 375. But different setups, it's the way it went, right? The GSF being an overhead cam engine, and it's more, you know, it was not designed to be the most torquey thing in the world, which is fine, right? It's not flat plane crank, right? It's not that. That's just the way that car is, and I don't mind that. And it weighs less, right? It's 3,700 pounds. So it's like, you know, it's actually fairly light for being a 4-door V8 sedan, especially from Lexus. Lexus makes a lot of heavy vehicles, so that one's actually quite light. Then you've got the onwards of the RCFs and on. All of them were pretty much within the same power range, right? 472 horsepower off of their 5-liters, just got bumped. Just literally, there wasn't much change from the 5-liter, right? And the nice thing is you don't really have to worry so much about it, especially, at least if, right? And this is only if you drive it long enough distances. If you drive it short distances, you're gonna have all that carbon buildup because it does have direct injection, right? It is a direct injected motor, but all of the 5-liters, including the 2008 versions, this is again Project Cars type status here. It was a dual injected vehicle, and what I mean by that is it is both direct and port injected. So yes, it has 16 injectors, which for me, I like that, right? I know some people might think that, you know, you should only really have one or the other, not both, because of, you know, cost and stuff. But I'm like, I like having the best of both worlds, because one's better than the other at certain things. Like especially like past a certain amount of RPM, especially if you're like, you know, if you're really just pushing it to its red line limit, direct injection, you know, injectors can only fire away so fast. I think once you cross about 6,500, the injectors just can't do their job anymore. Port injectors can still go. They will still keep going no matter what. So I'm like, some high rev limiting cars, it's a lot nicer if they have a port injected system or a dual injected. why you don't really see a lot of the Chevys, like a lot of the pushrod motors, even from Dodge. That's why you don't really see them crossing certain RPMs. Like you've got like from factory, like you've got the you got the LS7, yeah, LS7 being an RPM limit of 7,000. Everything else is what, somewhere between 6 and 6,500, maybe 68. But that's usually where the red line is for them. So I'm like, because of limitations of what a direct injection can do, at least when it came to the C7 and onwards, especially for a pushrod. Overhead cam, different story. They're gonna do whatever they need to do, right? They rev way higher. So, and they'll be tuned. The injectors will be tuned accustomed to whatever is needed at that point. But is it dangerous for a direct injection engine? It's like strict direct injection. Yeah, it can be. So, but yeah, I think back to the ISF, it being dual injected, I like it. That seems to be a very Toyota thing to do. They like to use both now, and it kind of really started with that car, and then now they use it on Tacomas, have it, Tundras have it. It's quite nice, actually. Now, is it supposed to give you better gas mileage? Not necessarily, right? ISF, sure, just because that is a smaller car. You know, it's the lightest of the cars that have that 5-liter. Like it goes, like some other cars, you have like the RCF. RCF, I think, is one of the nicest looking cars that they have, because, right, from a standard thing off with the V8, a standard for the RCF, it has one of my favorite mechanical things ever. It has a active wing or retractable spoiler. I love those. I just find them so cool, right? I just like the little things, right? I like the little things because it's you know, it's fun. It's amusing. Like for me right here, like I have, you know, my C5. The one thing that really did it for me is the fact that this thing has pop-up headlights. Right? It has the LS1, all that stuff, cool. Pop-up headlights. I love pop-up headlights. It's great. So, it's one of the key things that really, like, it's I like it, you know, it's very amusing to me. Like, so for the RCF, the fact that it has a retractable wing, awesome. Very, very awesome. Right. And no, like, you know, I see people, like, they're still slow or whatever. I'm like, I don't really care, to be honest. It's my money, right? If I were to go get one, it is my money. I'm going to go get what I want. Because this car is cool and it's fun for me, right? It's for me. You're not the one driving, I am. Some other cars that they have, GSFs, that's one of the, I guess, harder ones to find. That's basically like their version of the G8 GXP and the Chevy SS in terms of stints, right? Because they only, like the G8 GXP, they only made that at Pontiac for 2 years, from 08 to 09. Chevy SS was made here for 3 years, from 14 to 17. So the GSF was actually only made for 3 years as well, from 2016 all the way to 2019, and they discontinued it because of what I believe is lack of sales, right? There wasn't just anyone buying it. And then obviously you've got the LC500s, but that's more of its own realm, because that one, like, every time I see one, like, the minimum asking price is like $65,000, $70,000, and that's for a used one. Obviously, a brand new one, way more. Like a brand new one, probably closer to 100. And there's nothing super crazy about it from a performance standpoint, right? It has the same power as the RCF, as the GSF, as the IS500. They're all still in the that $60,000 range, 60 to 70, maybe. Like for the RCFs, they're probably the cheapest of the bunch. That's probably your best bang for buck, to be honest, between all of them, because it's got the most power and it's the lowest. It's the same price as a used one. It should be around the same price as an ISF. And there's about a 50 or like a 55 to 60 horsepower difference between the two. So if you worry about performance, I think RCF might be your best bet from a price, because the RCF and the ISF are around that $30,000 to $40,000 range. Right, they're relatively lower than the other three. ISF, GSF, and all of them, they're all in the 60, like high 50s to probably low 70s range. And you speak to LC500, which in turn is probably actually the worst of the from a performance standpoint, right? It's the heaviest, or one of the heaviest. Basically, it has a Dodge Challenger's weight with Mustang-like power, right? But you don't really get that LC500 for performance. I think that one you get it from just because it's just one of the greatest sounding factory cars ever. It's got a 10-speed automatic, and that thing is the fastest shifting torque converter, not dual clutch, right? It does not shift as fast as a dual clutch, but it can shift so close to, like, whatever you think a dual clutch, you might think that LC500 might be a dual clutch just because of how quick it goes. Like, with the moment you hit, you go either upshift or downshift on the paddles. It goes like pretty much before you could even blink. It's so instantaneous. So it's so nice. And if you don't know what that car looks like, I recommend looking at it. Look at the interior of that car. That one is probably one of the nicest interiors I've ever seen. I don't really care about some of the old school thing with a little touchpad and their touchscreen. I'm like, in terms of seats and just overall, oh, it's so nice. I'm like, that's what you call right there a luxury car. I think that's how you build a luxury car. You see an LC500, that is peak luxury from Lexus. So that's the thing. But I think if I were to go for a best bang for buck between the group, I would say, yeah, probably between an RCF or an IS5 or IS500, ISF. That'd probably be the best of the bunch, I think. Like the ISF, obviously from a practicality standpoint, ISF would be my primary target. And also, the only other thing I can notate if you ever look at ISFs is, I think after 2011, because that car is made from 2008 all the way to 2014. So if you go from 2011 all the way to 2014, those came standard with limited slip differentials. From 08 to 2010, or maybe a small part of 2011, those had optional. They were standard. They were not standard with limited slips. So if you look at that, cool. Everything else after that, literally all those cars that had limited slip off the gate. ISF, like I said, was just kind of the way the C5 is. You had your early and later C5, right? The way I had it in one of my other videos, where you had your pre-2001 and post-2001. This one, it's basically pre-2011, post-2011, the big differences. Like 08, they had one recall on the ISFs, which I'm pretty sure was fixed. It was, it was a fuel thing, just more about a fuel tank. So, but I think, yeah, the ISF is one of the nicest cars. Like, exhaust sounds great. Transmission is, I think, I see people complain about it. Transmission's fine, right? It's not the quickest in the world compared to today, obviously, because this transmission's from 2008, but it is still quick enough to the point where it can still keep up with, from a shifting standpoint, it can still keep up with some of the modern day 8 speeds. 10 speeds, all that, no, it doesn't stand a chance. Like from a shifting point. From speed, you're just gonna pretty much have to really find out. I've seen some ISFs like really take off. The big thing that the ISF is really good at is, from what I like, mid-range to top end is where it thrives. Low end doesn't seem to be a thing where the ISF is very good at. So, but I think ISF, RCF, I think would be the best bang for buck from that little lineup that they have. I'd go ISF basically off of what do you call it? Its own usability, I guess, type thing. It's more practical, right? 4-door vehicle. Only way I'd go for an RCF, like even with me having a Corvette, is because of, for me, it's literally the one thing that really gets me on that car is gonna be its retractable wing. That is pretty much the main, one of the final touches as to why I would even ever touch an RCF, is because I'm like, that thing has a retractable wing, right? And I like that. ISF is just a more practical standpoint where I can actually have a 4-door. So, but you guys go ahead and, you know, look all that stuff up for yourself. See if you like it or not. I love those cars. It's one of the other vehicles I would like, besides owning, you know, any of the American cars or Corvettes or whatever the case is. I just like their cars. They sound great. I think they look pretty good too. So, but all right then, I'm about to head to work. Y'all have a great day. I'm out.